How's my sound?
It's good. I think I may be at the wrong link here. Oh, no, here we go. All right, welcome everybody. I am here with Engelbert de Vera, a physical therapist, graduated in 1995. He's a veteran in the game. He's been practicing for a long time. He's got a lot of wisdom to share with you. My name is Brett Kestenbaum. I am a physical therapist and one of the co-founders of Covalent Careers. I graduated in 2014 and shortly thereafter founded Covalent Careers and newgradphysicaltherapy.com as well. And today we're going to be speaking about how to start a contract home health business. But before we get into that, Bert, I'd really just like to learn about your history and background and walk us through your history as a physical therapist and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Thanks, Brett, first and foremost, for having me here. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and share with your audience my journey and what I do as a physical therapist. So I've been a PT since 1995, graduated from the Philippines. And after graduation over there, got my local license in the Philippines and worked there for a while in an outpatient setting, did some home health as well. So in the fourth quarter of 1997, I got hired to work over here in the US. So I came here at September 21st of 1997. And then that's after 3 weeks of getting married, by the way. I have to go because I have a contract to fulfill. That was tough, man. So just 3 weeks of honeymoon and I got to go. And I told my wife, you know what? This is our future. I got to go. I got to pursue the American dream. And then she was on board and she was finishing her last year in medical school to be a doctor. So she said, yep, I know. You got to go. So I went and make the story short, after getting used to the American way of life, getting orientation, learning how to use credit card, putting gas in your car on your own, because I drove into a gas station. I was looking for people. Where are they? I was waiting for someone to put gas in my car, and come to find out, here in the U.S., you got to do it on your own.
Unless you're
So,
from Jersey, then you get it good.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So got my license in '98 after all the preparation and everything, and then I became a traveling PT for a company from '98 to 2003. And in the mid 2003, I had the itch of starting my own business because I got so burnt out with work. Okay, I remember that time I was working 21 days straight because they can't find a PT to replace me. And we were pregnant with our second child. Our first child was 3 years old at that time. And so that was the turning point in my career. I had to ask myself, how long will I be doing this? Okay, my wife wasn't working at that time. She was a full-time mom. And so at first I was thinking of doing the outpatient brick and mortar. And then I decided, you know what, after doing all the research and risk and reward analysis, I made a decision. Outpatient brick and mortar was not for me at that time because it's really expensive and I had no assurance whether I can make it or put food on the table or even pay myself. So make the story short, I discovered this model where you can contract with different home health agencies and provide PT, OT, and speech therapy services without so much overhead, without any office. I was officing from home, and that was it. The rest was history. So
Excellent, excellent. So here we are today, where now you're teaching a course on the subject. We'll never call anything perfected, but you've got a system down that's been working for you and then working for other people too. So I'd like to learn about the basics of this first. Take me through what exactly home health contracting is. Where does it start?
sure, sure. So first off, anyone who hears about home health contracting must first understand what is a home health agency.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because the client or the customer is the home health agency. You don't recruit or you don't market for patients directly. The entity that gives you patient is the home health agency. So what is a home health agency? A home health agency is a company that's certified by Medicare, or they're part of the insurance network, and they see patients that are considered homebound. Okay, meaning they cannot get out of their homes to go to outpatient clinics, and or it's a taxing effort to leave home, and so the doctor orders home health services. Okay,
Mhm.
and home health services not only entails rehab, it also covers nursing services, social workers, um, home health aides, the whole nine yards. Okay, so when a home health agency gets a referral from the doctor or from the hospital or from the nursing home, they will now cover the needs of the patient for rehab, whether it's PT, OT, or speech therapy. Okay, and that's when they call me. They call my company. They call me, hey Bert. Like, for example, we have a total knee, doctor ordered home health.
Mhm.
Can you cover the patient? And so that's where we come in. We provide the services for PT, OT, and speech therapy if there's a need for example, for stroke patients, when they order three disciplines. So that's how we do our business. Some people call it staffing company, but it's not really, it's not like the 13-week staffing company where they send you for a 3-month contract everywhere.
Mhm.
It's a local staffing in a sense. So imagine an outpatient brick and mortar. Remove the building, remove the huge equipments, remove the full-time workers. You just have the patient and the patient's chart, and you do it at patient's home. It's
Okay,
basically
so
exactly, yeah.
if I understand correctly, there's a home health agency, and the home health agency is essentially in charge of getting the patients because they have what you described as the Medicare certification, and
Hmm.
then they're going to call you because you're a physical therapist and they need to get these patients seen. They need PT, OT, speech, nursing, whatever it might be in the home.
Hmm.
And then what you're doing after that, take us through those steps. What is the next step here? So are you going to go see the patients? Is someone else going to go see those patients? How does that work?
Sure. So let's walk through the case study that I did about this model. So there's this one referral they sent to us on a Friday. It was a total knee. Okay. So they called me and they said, hey, Bert, we have a total knee. Can you guys take it? And so my reply to that is, what's the zip code? I want to make sure we can cover it.
Hmm.
So they give us the zip code, and then we turn around. My secretary, when I say we, my secretary will now get in touch with our roster of therapists, okay, based on the zip code. Let's say you, Brett, you live in that zip code. So
Hmm.
my secretary now will call you, hey, Brett, we have a total in your zip code.
Perfect.
Do
I'll
you
take
want,
it.
yeah, do you want to take it? You say, yes, okay. And then the next thing my secretary would do is call the PT assistant, who also covers that same zip code, okay, to make sure the PT assistant can follow through. So let's say the PT assistant is Jennifer. Okay, Jennifer, Brett will do the eval. You want to do the follow up after his eval? Jennifer says yes. Boom. Okay, now we're covered. She turns around, or I turn around, whoever takes the call. We tell the agency, yes, we'll take the referral. Okay, and now that referral will now be plotted in the software, okay, which is web based. Everything is in the cloud.
Whose
So
software is this? Is this your software, the home health agency software?
either one. So if the agency has a software, our first move is to make sure that we're part of their software. That way we can see all the necessary communication.
Hmm.
If the agency does not have a software, we do have this software. We have a certain software that we use, which we pay about 79 cents per billable note, and they have the app for Apple or Android, and it's very very robust and it's really user friendly.
Okay.
So regardless of what software it is, it goes to your inbox. Okay, so it's if once it's in your inbox, you go out and do your thing, you do your eval, and then after your eval is done, you let my secretary know, you call the PTA, you talk to the PTA with your plan of care, and then it goes, your eval now is going to the PTA's inbox. Okay, so you guys do your thing, you do your visits, and then what my secretary does is she goes online, looks at your notes, does the invoice online, and then we send that invoice to the agency. And then once we get paid, I turn around, I pay you, I pay the PTA, and I keep the profit.
Got it.
That's it.
So What happens if you can't fill the need? You just don't pick up that order, and then some other company will fill it?
Yes, so that's a very good question. We don't take every single referral they give to us. This is why they always ask us first, can you guys cover it?
Mhm.
Because the number one killer of any business is when you bite more than what you can chew. When you say,
Mhm.
yes, we can do it, and then come to find out you can't cover it, then you just lost that customer. They won't send you any more referrals.
Got it. So it sounds like the advantage for being a physical therapist and starting this, because it doesn't sound like you need to be a physical therapist to start this type of business, but
No,
it does sound like the advantage to being a physical therapist is that you can pick up the recs on your own, and then you can see the evals, and if necessary, you can go ahead and see the treatments if you can't find a PTA to follow up with that care.
exactly. I'm glad you pointed that out because there are indeed non-therapist owners who do this business model. However, once you're a therapist, especially with marketing, whenever you approach a home health agency and they know that you're a PT, OT, or SLP, they automatically want to somehow work with you compared to a non-therapist because
Hmm.
they know you can, you know, you can go in and make things, the steps necessary for you to get it done since you're a therapist, right?
Hmm.
And it's also easier for a therapist like us to form our crew, to recruit our therapists, our PRN therapists, because you're a colleague.
Hmm.
So whenever you go into a networking event or you meet someone, in a local nursing home or hospital, what happens when they know you're a PT? Oh, you're a PT? Yeah, I'm a PT
Yeah,
too. Yeah,
yeah,
boom.
yeah,
It's like you know each other for so long,
yeah.
right?
Like me and
Yeah,
you.
exactly. So yeah.
Okay, so very cool. So now walking off those same points, if you pick up a case and it requires PT and OT, do you need to supply both, or can you just pick up the PT section? Another company supplies the OT section.
It's ideal that you supply both because usually the home health agency only wants to talk to one company per referral. Okay,
Okay.
they don't want to be talking to different companies on different disciplines. Okay,
Now,
so yeah,
so what when cases get received, how often are they usually, or how often are they just physical therapy versus needing PTOT speech versus needing nursing versus
yeah,
whatever combinations might there be?
yeah. Just to clarify, I don't provide nursing services. I just provide the rehab services. Okay,
Okay.
so but you and I know PTs are usually ordered more than OTs and SLPs. So we're like the front line of referrals, right? So usually when the doctor orders PT and OT, it's usually a referral with a certain diagnosis, either a neuro or something with surgery on the uppers and all that. Although not necessarily, it's not about necessarily dividing uppers for OT, lowers for PT, which most companies do that. But we tell them it's no, it's not OTs for uppers and PTs for lowers,
Yeah.
but somehow you got to explain to them how that
Yeah.
works, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it just depends on the diagnosis. Yeah,
So how does that work with so who supplies the nursing services if needed?
the agency usually have their own nursing staff. Usually
Okay,
they're in-house.
got it. And that's pretty industry standard where that would
Yes,
be okay.
yes. Then the reason for that is because before they can get certified by Medicare or insurance, they have to have a full-time administrator, which is usually a nurse
Hmm.
or a DON, director of nursing. Of course, a nurse, director of nursing, and usually the owner is a nurse. So those are, I think, the top two requirements for any home health agency.
Okay, got it. That's pretty interesting. So um, they will provide the nursing, and then they are usually looking to contract out the rehab side of it.
Right, right. And some agencies have in-house therapists. I just want to point this out.
Hmm.
And they also have PRN therapists that are signed up directly with them. But even then, they still contract with a company like, what I have, because they don't want to leave money on the table when they have an overflow and they can't cover those anymore.
Got it.
Okay, they won't call the doctor and say, "Hey, doc, our therapists are full, we can't take this referral. The doctor will be upset. They won't send them referrals
Yeah.
anymore, right? So,
Great. Great. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so I want to make this as useful as we can for the people watching today and then anybody who'll be watching this video in the future. So now, take me through the steps here. I'm Brett Kestenbaum, physical therapist, and I hear about this thing, home health contract business, and I want to get started. Where do I start? Do I need to create a business entity? Do I need to get on insurance panels? Do I need cash in the bank? Do I need relationships? What is that first thing? What is the first step that I can take?
sure. That's a very good question. I always talk about the 5 major moving parts that you need in doing this business. Okay. For those of you guys listening to this or watching this or whoever's going to watch this later on, pay attention to this because these are the 5 major things you need to do this business model. Okay. Just knowing these 5 major moving parts alone, you can do this business. Okay. However, if you want to look in depth into how to really execute this business, Brett will give you the link to the videos. I have free videos on how to get this done or get this started. Okay. So the first major moving part is establishing your company. Okay. You need a company in order to be able to do what we call B2B transaction. It's business to business.
Mhm.
So if you're doing PRN work as an individual, and you and I know there's a lot of therapists doing PRN work, right? They get a call from home health agencies, hey, can you do eval for us, blah, 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 and they do PRN work as an individual. An individual PRN work does not give you leverage. You're only paid for what you do for the agency. So you're trading your time for money, okay? Whereas if you establish your own company, you are now putting yourself in a position where you can delegate that referral to any therapist working under your company. It's business to business PRN, okay? So that's number 1, have your own company, okay? Number 2, major moving part, you gotta have your contract, a contract between your company and the home health agency. That contract will spell out when are you gonna get paid, what are the fees for your therapist, okay? What areas do you cover? What are your qualifications? Where are they going to send the payment? Okay, and what happens? You know, if a situation rises where this happens or that happens, it spells out everything.
Mhm.
Okay, so every single situation should be in that contract. Okay, so that's contract. That's number 2. What else? So there's 2 contracts. One contract between your company and the home health agency, and then the next contract is between your company and your therapist, the therapist that's working for you, okay, as an independent contractor. Okay, I say PRN, independent contractor, because you don't want to hire full-time staff when you're doing this as much as possible. I have about more than 100 therapists across Texas. None of them are full-time. Most of them are PRN because they have full-time jobs somewhere. Okay, and the reason I went that route is because I don't want the liability of providing insurance or a responsibility of paying vacation, responsibility of making sure they have full-time load. I
Mhm.
don't want that. So I can sleep well at night, because I only provide what I have for the agency, and then I also pay a therapist for whatever they've done for me. Okay, so how many is that? 3, right?
Yep.
Company
You got it.
formation, contract to the agency, contract to therapist. Okay.
Mhm.
Number 4 major moving part, documentation. Okay. You gotta know what type of documentation to use in doing this model. And usually the home health agencies have their own software, like I said earlier. Okay. So you have to understand what's an episode, what's a certification period, what's an oasis. Okay. If you don't know those things, then there's always resources to learn what's an oasis and what certification periods are and all that stuff. Okay, or when are you supposed to do the eval once you get the referral? Okay, and the number 5 major moving part, it has to do with finance. Okay, your software for billing your services. Okay, software for paying your staff. Okay, the good news is You don't bill Medicare, you don't bill insurance. So you don't deal with Medicare codes or ICD-10 codes. You don't deal with Medicare denials. You just bill the agency straight up. Yep. So with this model, you're getting rid of the three top sources of headaches for therapists. What are those? Number one, billing Medicare and insurance. That's out the window. You don't do that in this model. Okay. Number two, marketing to doctors. Who do you think markets to doctors? It's the agency. The home health agency markets to doctors. They bring patients to you because they have a vested interest in billing Medicare and billing insurance after you see the patients. Okay. Number three, source of headache, manpower, paying full-time staff. You don't have a full-time employee in this model. You can do it and start it, with all PRN and just do it all the way PRN. Okay. I'm going to add one more. Number four, diving in 100%. Okay. You don't have to do that in this business model. You can keep your job. Okay. We all have bills to pay. You probably still have student loans that you're paying. You don't have to quit your job. Keep your job and do this on the side as a side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And once you've grown this business to a point where what you're making in this business is equal to your salary, then you can ask yourself, is it time to quit or do I just keep doing this? That's a good problem, right?
Yeah, definitely a good problem. I liked a lot of the points you had there, and thank you for breaking down the steps. That was much easier to visualize really how to get started. It really doesn't sound like there's much. I'm not going to go through each of these individually just because I don't believe that we're going to have time here. I do want to touch on one point for the audience here that you just mentioned, which was the point of leverage. So that's a really great point. When you're thinking through a lot of decisions in life, think about leverage, and what Bert was describing there was time leverage. He is leveraging his time by doing the upfront work of getting this contract, maybe seeing the eval, and then putting off the rest of the work, or not putting off, but outsourcing the rest of the work to a contract, either PT or PTA, who's going to see the rest of that patient case. Now, what that does is it allows him to bring in a small amount of revenue per case that's seen, but he can then go and spend his time maybe doing a new eval and then hiring another PTA to do the follow-up care or whatever that may be. So just think through that thought of leverage and where you can apply leverage both in your life, and then if you're thinking about things like business or anything like that, think through that mindset of how can I create leverage, free up my time so that every hour that you work, you get this leverage point on that hour. So going into establishing your company, let's just dive into a few things here, just real quick, very surface. Is there a specific type of company structure that you need, or can you really just create any company structure so that you can receive payments like you were describing?
Yeah, usually it's either LLC or S Corp. It just depends on your preference. But do we have time to touch on that leverage real quick?
Yeah, we got plenty of time here.
Okay, all right. So I just want to talk about numbers, because whoever is listening to this right now is probably asking, okay, how much are you going to make? How much are you making, right? So let's talk about numbers, and we'll show what kind of leverage do we have in this, okay? So going back to the example of the total knee replacement earlier, I'm going to explain to you guys real quick how I made $480 in 1 hour, okay? For the therapist listening right now, you're probably like, geez, that's too good to be true, man. Who makes 480 bucks an hour, right? So let's go back to that total knee. This is what happened. I did the eval on a Friday. My frequency was 3 times a week for 4 weeks. So that's 13 visits total, okay? In our area here in South Texas, the going rate is $75 flat per visit, okay? So I did the eval, that's $75. And then I did the discharge, that's another $75. So I made $150 for my 2 visits. The time required for those 2 visits is 30 minutes each, so that's 1 hour of my time, right? Now, from the frequency of 1 week 1, 3 week 4, there's 11 visits in between that I delegated to my PTA. So my PTA went out there, did the visits for this total knee for 11 visits, okay? I paid a PTA $45. I make $30 for every PTA visit. So 11 visits times $30, I created a passive income of $330. Okay? Passive because I'm not doing all the work. I just gave my plan of care. So $330 from the 11 visits from the PTA plus the 150 I made for 30 minutes eval, 30 minutes discharge, I made $480 just from 1 hour of my time. That right there is leverage. Now,
Okay.
should I decide not to do the eval and discharge because I want to spend time with my kids, go on a date with my wife, I still make the $330 from the PTA with a $30 per visit profit because it's my company. Okay. Now, someone might tell me, but Bert, I don't want to have someone see the patients. I'm a one-on-one patient therapist kind of guy. Dude, it's your company. See the patients if you like. You can see patients as much as you like because it's your company. All right. So don't get hung up on, just delegating therapists and delegating patients to the therapist. You have that option, and that's how you make money. So I just want to touch up on that.
Yeah, it's a good point. And so what you were describing there is not only do you get time leverage in the sense that you can create more dollars per hour, you also get to make the decision on how that time is spent and how the patients get seen. So if you want to see the patient throughout the whole continuum of care, you're probably going to end up getting a higher rate than if somebody contracted you out to a company, because you're getting to keep the entire spread on that. You don't have to pay out the spread, the portion of that to someone else. So you're going to make more money per visit. And then you can also decide how you want to split those visit up. Do you want to see this full patient throughout the whole continuum of care, or do you want to hire out for that?
Right.
So if I wanted to get my first patient, how do I get these contracts? Where do I go? Is that like an easy thing, or is this something that's challenging, but you just happen to know how to do it? How does that all work?
It's a very good question because usually I get that question a lot. Hey, Bert, how do I get a contract? If I go to your program and you mentor me, how do I get a contract? Okay. So, and the answer to that is real easy. Okay. Someone who always tells me, or most therapists will tell me this excuse: Bert, I'm not a marketer. I'm not a marketer. Okay. How am I going to go out there and market my business? And my answer to that is, dude, you're a marketer. You sell yourself every day to your patients, right? What happens when you see your first patient or your initial contact with an initial eval? You sell yourself, right? It's the same dynamics, okay? You tell your patient who you are, what do, you identify the problem, you establish a plan of care, and you execute for however frequency. Same thing with business. You go out there, you talk to the home health agency, you tell them what your company is about, what services do you offer, what areas do you cover, how much do you charge, when do you expect to get paid, and what software do you know, and stuff like that. Okay, it's the same dynamic. So how do you go out there? I teach my mentees or the students in my program how to first survey the agencies in your area. So you can identify real easy how many agencies are in your area based on zip code or county. And then you can compare based on national ratings how they're doing as far as quality of services. The perfect score is 4 stars. So if you see that their rating is 4 stars, then that's a good sign, obviously. 3 stars, still decent. Once they get to 2 stars, now you have to think, do I really want to work with this agency, right? And then obviously 1 star, you don't even want to touch them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's how you approach that part of the business.
So, okay, so you were describing that you're not the one billing Medicare. The home health agency is going to be the one billing Medicare. They're going to take care of all that. How do you get paid?
We invoice the agency straight up. So on the contract, it says there, for example, here in South Texas, $75 flat rate within the city limits, and then we probably add 10 or 15 bucks more outside city limits. So on the invoice, what you're gonna see is PT eval, for example, done by Bert de Vera on this date, and the fee is $75. Okay. Let's say, let's go back to Jennifer as my PTA. Now, the next line is PTA visit, patient's name, date of visit, $75. So straight up, no coding whatsoever. It's whatever per diem rate you have in the contract that was signed by you and the agency. It's as simple as that.
I understand. Now, how do you decide what that rate is so that you're able to actually get this contract with the agency? Is it just trial and error, or is there a specific method?
There's usually a way to find out the going rate in any city. Okay. The best way to find that out is one example is pretend you're applying as a PRN therapist in any agency. They will tell you how much they're going to pay you. And we usually go by that standard. So whatever they pay on a PRN level, the rate we charge business to business is not far from that. Okay. But the way we make money is we make money through the PTA and the quotas, okay, the OT assistants. So the spread of the margin is with the assistants. You don't make money on the PTs and OT supervisors. You basically break even or just make a little bit. Okay. So for those of you who are thinking, but I don't want to use assistants, I want to just use PTs and OTs. I just want to point out real quick, I used to be like that. I used to be an arrogant PT saying I'm the only one who can make this patient better. Okay. But until I realized that you got to give assistants a chance to see patients because results don't lie. Okay. Results don't lie. Assistants, believe it or not, with their experience, with their knowledge, can produce results. So you got to give them a shot. Okay. So just want to say that.
Yeah, and that's important. I think trusting our fellow colleagues is very important. Just like we want doctors to trust us and other professionals to trust us with their patients, it's the same thing. We need to have that mutual respect for others in our industry and understand that the training that physical therapist assistants get is high quality when it comes to the treatment of patients. They wouldn't be that profession wouldn't be in existence if that quality wasn't there. Now, I
Right.
know a lot of times as therapists, we do want to have control of our own patients, specifically because we feel an obligation or we have the relationship and we really want to see it through. That's a different circumstance, but like you described before, as the business owner, you would be able to make that decision for yourself and decide who necessarily you would want to see all the way through that plan of care or what you would want to happen there.
Right. Exactly.
What are the risks versus the rewards of doing this model? Are there any startup costs that are required? It really doesn't sound like there are very many startup costs, if any. And then what are the risks? Are you taking on any legal risks above and beyond anything that you'd be taking on as a therapist, or just in general, any other risks that we should know about?
I'm glad you asked me that because I get asked that question a lot as well. So thanks for asking that. So let's discuss risks as far as this business model. Okay. Number one that I require from my staff is professional liability insurance. It's actually also required by the home health agency. So as far as risk when it comes to malpractice and negligence, professional liability insurance will kick in. Okay. Some agencies will require you to have a business insurance, business liability insurance, but in my own opinion, that won't even kick in unless you're driving to a patient's home and instead of hitting their brake, you hit the gas and hit their garage or hit their living room. Then that's where that comes in, right? But very rarely that happens. Okay, so and if that ever happens, usually your car insurance will kick in, not a business liability insurance. Because business liability insurance is usually for a building, a brick and mortar, or somebody walks in, they slip, they fall. That's where it kicks in. So in this model, everyone is required to have professional liability insurance, and that right there is tax deductible. It's a business expense, and it covers any therapist that works for me wherever they work. Okay, so that's that. Now, as far as the business in general, what's the risk? Let's play the scenario. When you do this business model and you don't have a patient, Are you losing money? My answer to that is no, you're not, because you're still keeping your job as usual. You still have money to pay your bills or your student loans. Okay, it's as usual. You're not losing money. Okay, now let's state the fact that if you own a brick and mortar, this is nothing against those who own brick and mortar. I have friends who own their outpatient. I'm just stating the fact. If you own a building, or leasing a building, if you don't have enough patients for the month to cover your overhead expenses, then you have a problem, right? Let's say your overhead expenses is $5,000 or $10,000, depending on your rent, your utilities, and stuff. Your first 50 patients is probably going to cover your overhead expenses. Whereas in this model, you don't need a certain number of patients to cover any overhead expenses because you hardly have any overhead expenses. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing, what if, let's say, Brett went out and did an eval for me, and then he came back and told me, hey, Bert, this patient is not homebound. We can't pick up this patient. Okay, so Brett is now going to bill me for that eval. Am I going to lose money? The answer is no, because I'll turn around, bill for that eval that Brett did, and charge the agency for that eval because they still need a copy of that eval. So the money is coming from the agency for me to pay Brett. I don't lose money.
Right. Yeah. So I think, one point there is in that scenario, you're not losing money. The thing that we do lose a lot of times as entrepreneurs is time. We'll make time mistakes. But as an entrepreneur, someone who would want to start up a business like this or whatever, you're really not concerned too much with the time mistakes because the goal, especially in the beginning, is not to run out of money. And in this case, like you're describing, you don't have any overhead costs except for one, which I'm going to get to your question, Ty, in a moment. And then you really don't have any startup costs as well, and you can also work your normal job while starting this up as a side hustle if you wanted to do that. So Bert, we do have a question from Ty Edwards here, reasonable question, which is, what are the costs of liability insurance?
It depends on who you go with as far as liability insurance. I think the most common company that we get liability insurance is what? There's a 4-letter company. I don't know if I'm allowed to say their name. It's free advertising for them, right? But you can shop for any liability insurance, professional liability insurance. I pay less than $200 a year. I think I'm paying $175 for a PT liability insurance a year.
Yeah, we're super fortunate at PTs that our liability insurance not very expensive.
Right, because as you can see, that there's a reason why it's not expensive. We don't get sued a lot, unlike doctors, right? So that's usually the reason. So.
I have a question here from Tiara Roll. She's asking, when considering what you pay your therapists, what is the standard mileage rate that you pay?
We don't pay mileage. That's a very good question. Usually it's a flat rate, okay? Your therapist, your PRN therapists are better off claiming their mileage at the end of the year because you tend to get the full amount allotted by IRS. So if it's 55 cents a mile, you can use an app like Mile IQ to track your mileage. And then at the end of the year, your CPA or your bookkeeper can deduct whatever mileage you incur for doing this business. And the reason for that is this: it's a pain in the butt to charge for your mileage to the agency, and it can also be a deal breaker because most agencies don't want to pay mileage. It's kind of included in the flat rate. Okay, so but you can search IRS for the going rate. I think it's 55 cents a mile last time I checked. But then again, in this business model, it's not a factor. So.
Right, and you were describing before in the beginning that you are going to contract out when the agency sends a rec through to you. The first thing you look at is what's the zip code. So before you're accepting that rec, you're looking at the zip code and you're seeing if it would be reasonable for any of the therapists that you have in your Rolodex to go and see them.
Yes.
So Tiara, I think the answer there is you are going to be baking that into the just the standard pay rate that you would be paying the therapist, as opposed to separating it out as an additional line item, because that's going to create more administrative headaches for everybody, and it might be a deal breaker when you're trying to get that contract from the company.
Right.
So just explain that when you're hiring on the therapist is really the best way to go about it.
Right.
Okay, very good. Any other questions from the audience that we can take? I do have a question from the beginning here from Brady Christoph. I'm not sure if this is definitely not my expertise, may not be yours there, Bert. So if you can answer it, very. Any advice on pediatrics? I have an offer to spend 10 hours a month with some nonprofit homes. I work acute care, but I have experience with kids through schools.
You kind of cut off there, Brett. Can you repeat that, please? So it's
Yeah,
probably
so the
internet.
The question was, any advice on pediatrics? I have an offer to spend 10 hours a month with some nonprofit group homes. I work acute care, but I have experience with kids through schools.
Okay, so that's another question I usually get. Pediatrics is usually funded by the state. It goes through Medicaid. Okay, I don't do pediatrics because the margins here in Texas is not that good. Okay, and it requires more time because usually when you do pediatrics, you either have to wait until they get home from school. Most of these kids go to special ed schools. And the other thing is, again, it's tedious, so it requires more time. You probably need more than 30 minutes. Now, if that's your passion and you're okay with that, you have to make sure that you're also making a profit. Because if you're going to spend more time with the kids and you hire PRN therapists that are going to spend more time with the kids, then you have to factor in the time they put in that session. And again, are you going to make a profit? So it's case to case basis, depending on the funding of the state.
Awesome. Now, what is the ramp up time to start earning significant revenue for this? So, for example, let's say, how long would you tell someone that it would take them to start earning $50,000 from starting a business like this?
Okay. The answer to that is it depends on how hard they want to hustle. Okay. So let's start with, how long does it take to get you up and running? How long does it take for you to be open for business and be ready to accept referral? Okay. My promise to any student or any possible mentee in my program is you can be open for business in as little as 30 days. Okay. And the reason for that is because if you look across the United States, how long does it take to set up your company? You can get it done in 30 days or less. In Texas, it's less than a week. Okay. In California, I think it's about in the area of 30 days, but if you expedite it, you can get it done in 2 weeks. I don't know. For some reason, California takes a longer time, you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
Yeah. So
They just
now,
love to put everything on the back burner.
yeah. So anyway, let's go back to the example of $50,000. Okay. I'm not sure if I can share my screen or click something, but if
You
you,
should be able to. If you
okay,
hover over. If not,
let me see
oh
here.
well.
Chat, screen share. Okay, great. Share. All right. Now I can do, can you see my screen?
Hmm.
All right. So I'm gonna pull up my calculator here. I don't want to cover Brett's face. There you go. So let's say your goal is to make $50,000 in 1 year. Okay. And your profit margin is what? $30 per PTA and quota visit. So this will give you the number of visits. You need 1,666 visits to make $50,000 passive. Okay. So you divide that by 52 weeks a year. So you need about 32 visits a week from your assistants to make 50 grand. You divide that by 2 disciplines, PTA and quota, you only need 16 visits from each discipline. Is that doable? Heck yeah, that's very doable. Okay, 16 visits a week, that's probably only 2 referrals at 2 times a week for 4 weeks, 8 visits. Okay, so there you go. That's how you can make that. You can make more than that if you hustle and you get more contracts and you grow your team. The good thing is you can always scale. Okay, I call this, this is how you scale. You always have your first 5. Okay, can you see me or you can only see my screen? Okay, I stopped sharing my screen. Can you see me
Perfect.
now?
Yep,
Okay,
gotcha.
great. So, were you able to hear me while I was showing the
Yeah,
screen?
all good.
Okay, all right. So, how do you scale? You start with your first five. Your first five is one PT, one PTA, one OT, one OTA, and one speech therapist. If you start with those first five and scale from there, then you keep growing your crew.
Got it. So Megan, I'm going to get to your question. Tiara's question seems to be on the same line of thought here. Um, Tiara Roll asked, how do you get your therapists and how do you vet your therapists?
Great, good question. So you
I actually
get
think
there.
she only asked about vetting, but let's go with both.
Okay. So you first start with your network. Okay. You know therapists wherever you work, right? I started with people who I knew from my workplace when I started this. Okay. And then those people know therapists that you don't know, right? So it's like a spider web. It's like how did Facebook grow, right? Friends know friends and all friends, right? So that's how you get therapists. How do you vet therapists? You do your background check. Okay, you do your background check, you do your reference check. Okay, do not neglect doing your due diligence of checking their criminal history, doing a urine drug test. With the opioid crisis we have now, it's necessary that you have to do your urine drug tests. Only costs 30, $40 to the urgent cares or walk-in clinics, right? And then the background checks is critical. You have to make sure that they don't have any criminal history. Okay. First off, you start at the state board. Okay. You verify your license, make sure they don't have disciplinary actions.
Mm-hmm.
Then you do the rest.
Got it. Now I have a few more questions here. The first one, I believe you covered earlier from Megan Kovarik. Hopefully I pronounced that right, Megan. Do you use your own documentation system or do you have to use the agency's specific documentation system?
You start by um, approaching the agency if you can use their documentation. Okay. One, like I said, you can access nursing communication, and then you can see if the patient has been admitted by the agency, because this is critical. If they give you a referral for eval, whether it's PT, OT, or speech, if you go out there and the nurse has not done the admission, you won't get paid. They will not pay your eval or whatever you did unless the admission has been done. It's like
Mhm.
somebody, going to the hospital, they do the admission packet first, right?
Right.
So it's the same thing with home health. So you got to make sure the admission was done. Now, the other advantage of going to the agency software is it's free. You don't have to pay for it because now you're using their system, right? Now, if they don't want you to use this system, there's always different types of software you can use for your own company. However, I don't recommend that because the communication now is kind of um, broken.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, that's that.
Just plug it in, make it easy. It's already there. Might as well use it.
Right.
Okay, very cool. One more question here. Do you find it difficult to compete with agencies that employ their own therapists?
No, the answer to that is no. I think I mentioned that earlier. A lot of companies do have their in-house therapists. They do also have some PRN therapists. It's not hard or it's not a problem to approach them to do business with them, like I said, because when they have overflow, they want those patients covered. Okay, they're not going to call the doctor, like I said earlier, and tell the doc, hey, we're full, we can't take it. No, that will be stupid. Okay, so whenever you approach an agency and they tell you, hey, Bert, we already have in-house therapists, or we're already contracting with this company, I think we're okay right now. There are ways to get your foot in the door, and I teach that to my mentees. Okay, the other question I get is, what about the competition, Bert? How will I do this on this side if there are already contractors in the area? Okay, my answer to that is a question. How many burger places do you see in your area? How many pizza places do you see in your area? Is there only one? No, right? There's more than one. Do not worry about the competition. Do you know how many seniors turn every single day? How many baby boomers do we have every single day? 10,000 seniors are getting into that stage every day. There's always patients. There's always people needing help. If you will stop yourself from doing a business, for example, such as this or whatever type of business you like, because someone is doing it, then you're basically letting the competition win, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
definitely. So, I think that's a really good point, and it's something very important for physical therapists because a lot of times when we're thinking about careers when we're younger, we get into physical therapy because it's safe. And there's an important aspect to life called risk taking. And when you take risks, you get rewards on the other side. And usually they're asymmetrical. You take X amount of risk and you'll get X squared amount of reward out on the other side of it. And what you're describing in your business, which what I like, is that there's really not much risk except for um, I will describe it as failing, and the only way that it sounds like you can fail with this business is if you just stop trying, um, because there's always going to be a way to get there. Especially because all you have to do is get one contract, and then you can see the patients on your own. So that's what's intriguing to me from what I'm hearing to you about, from what I'm hearing from you about this model of business here, is that you can take very minimal risk, and on the other side of it, you can see reward. But um, if I'm going to be honest with everybody out there, typically when you're trying anything new, whether it's working out or it's playing soccer or playing baseball or whatever it may be, being a physical therapist, you're always going to start out with struggle. Or the likelihood is that you're going to start out with struggle, and you need to embrace that struggle because that means that there is a dip, Seth Godin's term there, that's going to bring you through the struggles to the reward on the other side. And that's why the reward is typically asymmetrical to the amount of risk you're taking, because there is that hard part where a lot of people are going to give up, and you just need to be that person who's not going to give up.
right? Totally agree. Sorry about the dogs in the background. I
there's
guess
nothing
it's
better than there's nothing better than background dog noise.
yeah. It's time for their dinner. I guess they're hungry. We have three
Well,
dogs.
they know because we're actually closing in on the ending time here. So I'd like to take any final questions that you have here. Yeah, those dogs sound like it's dinner time. That's right, Liz. Um, but let's just wrap this up with where can people find you? How can they get in touch with you?
They can find me at homehealthcontract.com,
Hmm.
or they can also find me at rehabpreneur.com.
Okay.
Or to make it simple, it's bertpt.com. That's B as in boy, ERTPT.com. Or they can click the link that you guys have for this webinar. So,
Right. So there's actually a link in the sidebar there, rehabpreneur.com/covalent careers. If you
mhm.
go to that link, I believe it will take you somewhere where you're able to download a free portion of
4 free videos.
4 free videos from Bert's course, which will go into more detail on some of the steps that he outlined before. If you do have any questions about any of these subjects, please feel free to reach out to me, which I'm not going to really be able to give you as good of answers as Bert, so I'll probably just connect you with Bert. Or you can reach out to Bert directly, as he just described.
Excellent.
Well, Bert, pleasure as always. Congrats on all the success with everything you've had going on. And I appreciate the fact that you've been paving this way for physical therapists and occupational therapists to start their own business. I think that's very important. And you've done it in a way that makes it very easy for them to get started. And it makes it easier for them to earn this side income and create it into a scalable business if they so choose. So thank you for your work there.
Thanks. And if they want to see, by the way, some testimonials of other colleagues who've done this business, they can go to the website as well. And there's a tab there for testimonials, and they will see how these colleagues, started this. And most of them quit their jobs in a matter of 3 months, 8 months. It depends on how they really hustled. So
Very cool. So
yeah,
thank you all for coming and joining us today and listening to this. For all of you out there, this is just the beginning of your journey. No matter where you are in life, it's always the right time to get started. Just take that first step, and you'll see that magical things do happen over time if you're just willing to put in the work, and do the things that you need to do. So thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Brett. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Bert.
Thank you.